Sometimes an idea is too damn good to ignore. Because I saw this tweet pop up on my timeline yesterday, and I immediately, instinctually locked on to the Vancouver Canucks after reading this tweet. And I was like, for a split second, Lego, what are you talking about? That's a crazy idea. Like, you don't really have any reason to go out there and believe that's a good idea, right? Nobody else is talking about it, right? And then I saw this article that was published on CanucksDaily.com, which does go out there and bring the same idea up, and I was like, you know what, gosh darn it. NHL hockey is on pause. We're watching the Four Nations. There's not too many trades going down, or at least I don't think there are at this point in time, so why not go out there and dive into one of the craziest and most retrospective ideas that Vancouver Canucks fans could legitimately start thinking about. As always, the show is brought to you by ExpressVPN. Go out there and check out the first link in the description to save some money on your VPN, get some free months, and support this YouTube channel. But today we are talking about the Kraken. What's Kraken, baby? The Seattle Kraken are one of the worst teams in the Pacific Division. And when you think about where they're at in their timeline, they've kind of hit a bit of a wall, I would say. They had a great season 2 years ago, were fantastic in the 2022-2023 season. They ended up winning their first round series against the reigning, defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche team. But the season after, Kraken hockey wasn't really in too great of a spot. And another season after, this season, they are in the bottom half of NHL teams, and it's not even really close. Seattle is 28th in the league as I record this video. Oh yeah, they're one of the worst teams in the league. So with this in mind, they are in a spot where you could debate whether or not trading away some of their pieces that are on the older side, or not necessarily like old, but just sort of more middle-aged, prime-listed guys. Maybe making a trade or two with one of these guys is an appropriate idea. Which is why we dive into this tweet made by Jacob Stoller from earlier 2 days ago. Obviously, Stoller does work for Sportsnet. He writes Winnipeg Jets content over there. But he says this: I'm hearing Jared McCann could be made available before the deadline. McCann is a versatile scoring forward that can kill penalties and play center if needed. The 28-year-old carries a $5 million AAV until the 26-27 season. And because Stoller is a Winnipeg Jets writer, he says here that it would make a lot of sense for the Winnipeg Jets. And I get it, you know, this tweet is going out there and talking about the Jets. Oh yeah, Winnipeg, go out there and get your guy, Jared McCann to Winnipeg. We can talk about that too if you guys want, but I wanted to focus on Vancouver because I looked at this situation right away and I was like, wait a minute. Jared McCann is smack dab in the middle of his prime. He's 28 years old. He's relatively cheap. I mean, $5 million a year is not that bad. And this season, the guy has scored himself 42 points in 57 games played. Sure, he is on pace for only 60 points this year. And I say only because he had accomplished 62 last year and 70 points the year before that. Jared McCann, ever since donning the Seattle Kraken sweater in their inaugural season, has been a very, very good hockey player, pulling the trigger when he needs to, scoring some important goals, scoring 40 goals in a season in that 70-point campaign he had in 22-23, and just being an overall versatile offensive stud. I think Jared McCann would be a top 6 player on most, if not all, NHL teams. And at that $5 million mark, oh yeah, it's totally fine for him to be some sort of a trade option, even with that full salary. He's got a modified no-trade clause, and the contract goes on for 2 more seasons after this one, so if you're able to get this guy while you're in playoff contention mode, yeah, that's a pretty good bet, I'd say. Jared McCann is a versatile scoring ad. And for the Vancouver Canucks, who have been in the need for a guy who can play center, a guy who can score goals, a top forward who can contribute significant offense, this is a guy that I think fits the bill a little bit better than Josh Norris does. And mostly I say that because of health-related reasons, but I also say that because Jared McCann has just been more productive than Norris. Now, I get it, Norris has had some point per game years where the production rates are similar, if not maybe even a tad better, but at the same time, Josh Norris has had a very difficult time staying healthy, and he doesn't play the wing. McCann can. He can also play center, which I think is where a lot of that value comes from, because McCann plays all three forward positions pretty all right. I know that there's a Josh Norris argument in there because you can say, oh yeah, but if the entire reasoning for the Vancouver Canucks to go out there and get another top six center is because they want to keep Quinn Hughes around, firstly, Josh Norris is a guy whose contract goes on for a little longer, and he also happens to be Quinn Hughes' best friend from Michigan. So there is definitely ample reason to consider Norris over a guy like McCann, but when you consider the fact that McCann is cheaper, and he is a tad better, okay, do I want to say fully a tad better? I don't know. I think at their best, you can say that Josh Norris is at the level of Jared McCann, but the fact that McCann has been so much more healthy the past few years definitely plays more into his favor, in my opinion. Even though you can say that Josh Norris has his own reasonable attributes that make Vancouver target him more so than McCann. But the reason I even wanted to go out there and make this video is because the idea was brought up by Cooper Godine on Canucks Daily yesterday. Reunion? Former Canucks first-round pick reportedly on the trade block. And the article's title, just that alone, we hadn't discussed yet. The fact that Jared McCann is a former Vancouver Canucks prospect whom Jim Benning selected before David Pastrnak in the 2014 NHL Draft. McCann was much better than Jake Virtanen right out of the gate. It's just they traded him away to Florida for Erik Gudbranson, which was a really big deal, and a video that we actually did make back in the day. Oh my gosh, I do remember when we talked about this. I was jumping up and down in my living room excited because the trade happened, and I was like, oh yeah, that guy's going to be really good. Why did the Canucks just trade away Jared McCann? But it's okay because Erik Gudbranson's really good too, right? And Florida Panthers fans were upset that they traded him away. It was a really big deal back when it happened 8 years ago, and to think that in 2025, Jared McCann is so much of a better player than Erik Gudbranson ever was, and now we can consider the idea of him getting traded to Vancouver one more time? Oh boy. I absolutely love that thought. This article goes out there and writes that according to Jacob Stoller of Sportsnet, he's hearing that McCann could be available. Stoller also shared that if needed, McCann can play center, which could intrigue his former club in Vancouver, who has been searching for help down to middle ever since trading JT Miller nearly 2 weeks ago. The article then writes that McCann, a native of Stratford, Ontario, was selected 24th overall by Vancouver 11 years ago and made the jump to the NHL from the OHL in 2015-16, which he admitted probably wasn't the best move, and he likely needed time in the AHL. After one season in Vancouver, he was traded to the Florida Panthers for a package that included Erik Gudbranson, and yada yada yada. The article just kind of says the rest of the story here for McCann. But I absolutely love this idea. Bring him back. If you're going to reunite Petey with Bo Horvat, why don't you reunite McCann with the Vancouver Canucks? Like, you realize if Jared McCann gets brought back to Vancouver, he all of a sudden has the oldest tenure with Vancouver even before Brock Besser. He overtakes the guy, even though he had only one season in Vancouver wherein he scored 18 points in 69 games played. I love the player that Jared McCann is nowadays. He is really great offensively, and I think this is the kind of guy that the Vancouver Canucks could expand upon and use in their top six. I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you are Patrick Allvin and Jared McCann was available, who are you targeting first, Norris or McCann? Who are you targeting more? Who do you think helps out this team better, and who do you think is the better player? These are all separate questions. You can think that Jared McCann is a better player while thinking that Norris benefits the Vancouver Canucks more. You can think vice versa. You can think about the center position. You can think about the winger position. You can think about all these extra things. So I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the idea of a Jared McCann trade? Is this a realistic option in your eyes? And what do you think the trade price is? A 70-ish point guy who can score 30 to 40 goals, who's making only $5 million a year at 28 years old, signed on for 2 seasons, that is not going to be cheap. So if Vancouver has to trade away, let's say a Lekaramaki and a first and another thing, is that appropriate in your eyes? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.